Alright guys, Subscriber here, back again today. I'm not exactly sure which day this video is going to go live, but I wanted to talk about entitled amateur players and something that was talked about on the Hardpoints podcast with TP and Merk, of course, also Maven, that's what I was getting confused, and Crowder as well. They talk a few things about some of the entitlement that they see in amateur players, or at least some of the amateur players. Of course, not a generalization, try our best not to do that for the Minnesota event that happened a couple of weeks ago now. The Challengers event for the Call of Duty League this weekend is being held at a parking garage. This was one of the main things surrounding it, but there also were a lot of other legitimate complaints and things that could be improved upon next time. There's a fine line to walk here, because I definitely think that some of the amateur players today, especially when you look at the kind of crowd that was on this podcast, you know, Crowder being one of them, TP and Merk being other ones that have played way back in the day, and Maven as well, I think even, you know, competitive Halo and stuff like that, all the way back in the past. Those guys playing for pennies against the best players in the world, compared to nowadays what the Challengers guys are playing for in the environment that they have. However, you know, times have moved on. There are some key issues that still present themselves to the Challenger side, and the main thing I really wanted to talk about was the lack of a stream, because it's a pretty big deal to me, and we'll talk about this in coming minutes. A lot of content to go through. Like, if you guys enjoyed the video, I would greatly appreciate it. The YouTube algorithm would as well. Subscribe if you're new, as always. Firstly then, just to kick off with a couple of clips here from the Hardpoints podcast where Merk and Crowder, they talk about the situation.
What other esport or franchise esport has 200 team open bracket tournaments?
I'll answer that one for you, Clint. It's zero.
It's zero. And the reason why is because they're a pain in the ass, they're expensive as hell, and it's a goddamn nightmare to do. I don't think people realize how close it was to that not even existing. The only reason that I think that existed was because this existed for so long. They didn't want to upset a lot of fans. They wanted to keep that in the ecosystem. And I wasn't part of that decision at all, but I was actually surprised to see that end. So when I saw people freaking out about having a $250,000 tournament in that garage or basement, whatever you want to call it, oh my God, you idiots! I was so mad, because like I just don't think a lot of them realize how, like, I guess, like, lucky they are to have what they have.
Well, and to be careful when you're posting stuff like that. It's your own thing.
It wasn't bad at all. Like,
not at all.
It wasn't even bad. Like, I went down there after, the first time I saw it, I was like, that's probably going to be a video.
That is more money than I competed for until like 2 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, it's wild.
I was playing formal Scump Karma, you know what I'm saying, in Crimsix for $2,000 in a ballroom of a hotel, in a much worse situation, in a much more cramped situation, and like it sucked, but at the same time, like, that's just what it was.
So this video was the initial one that was going around, talking about how this was before the event had even started. They were playing in what's called they called it a parking garage, right? Or garage, I think people say in the States. I always forget which one's which. But look, regardless, it was super cold in here. That's because they hadn't started the heating yet. It was basically freezing temperature down here. And, you know, this kind of got people riled up, saying, like, you know, what are they doing to the amateur community? This is kind of pathetic. But look at all these stations, man, like all the way around. Like, the amount of effort this takes to set up for the amateur side of the scene is incredible. And also this area that we found out later, like, this is used for other things. It's not actually like external to the building. It's kind of in the building, just a floor below from where the main stage is, to my understanding. And they have good heating facilities, and I think for the rest of the weekend it was fine. So definitely some people, as Maven and the other guys are saying, like, went overboard here. Like, there was absolutely... It was pretty outrageous, the kind of stuff that was being said. And look, these guys, the amateur players, they're playing against other amateur players for a $250,000 prize pool that Activision had put up. And it's not even just that money, it's all the other stuff, right? All the setup, all the support for the amateur scene, trying to culture and nurture the amateur scene to help those guys get involved from the challenger side into the professional scene and create that environment and that ecosystem. Maven even said in that clip, I'm not sure if I'll play that exact one for you in this video, but he was talking about how he wasn't even expecting them to do this. He was expecting them to keep it as it was and just let the individual homestands decide what they want to do for the amateur stuff, if any. But they did go along with it, and they did put a huge amount of effort and resources and money here into nurturing the scene. Of course, the question marks is, there's other issues around it, and there wasn't even an official stream, right? So if you're going to go all this way, why not go the full hog, if you see what I'm saying? Especially with $250,000 on the line. But yeah, I do think that some of the amateur players, like, saying that, you know, talking about the parking garage and things like this, are entitled to some degree, especially given that, they're not exactly professional caliber, but it's still, obviously a fantastic thing to Activision and the CDL to be able to do to help nurture this community of players. I think there's some entitlement. I don't think that's the case for most amateurs. I think most amateurs probably think, they're pretty lucky to be in the position they are with even the potential to make a career and to, off what they're doing right now, which is a pretty rare situation. And Activision, of course, and the CDL giving them the opportunity to prove themselves and get into the professional leagues. However, there are some legitimate complaints that I wanted to go through. So first of all, BZ says, hey, let's release a schedule and make it so that winners round 4 is played Saturday morning, then change it after everyone leaves the venue and heads back to their hotels and B&Bs. So apparently they changed the rule set pretty significantly and how the schedule is going to work. A lot of people said they were like grinding super hard on Saturday, like 14-hour days, and then on Sunday like they had to get up super early in the morning, which is pretty difficult. The fact was even the question was pathetic. People wasted money coming back to the venue. It's obviously not ideal situation in that instance, and I think a lot of people were talking about that. And then Lucci says this, think it's really bad you aren't even allowed access to free water at the Call of Duty event, even from a tap. No facilities to refill your water bottles, will not be able to get tap and take water into the venue. I feel bad for gamers who spend a lot to get here and don't have much money. I imagine some gamers have hardly any money and have spent a good amount to get here. Having to spend £3 for a water bottle is ridiculous. They even turned the cold water off in the taps, so you're only able to get hot water. In the UK, as I said, you're not allowed to do that. In the States, apparently you are, but this is something that, I don't think this is acceptable. I don't think it's an entitled thing for amateurs to expect to be able to get free water in an event. That seems like a pretty basic ask, I would say. And then you also have this from Dave. So they got forfeited their first map when they lost to Team Singularity, who went on to win the amateur tournament, and they had to forfeit first map because Steve-O, and as Dave says here, they had a 14-hour day on the Saturday, having to do media after it as well. At midnight, they can't, they had to do media at midnight. Then they have to be there next day for like 9 a.m. straight back on the grind again. And apparently he was Steve-O, so that's Vortex. He was throwing up, he was ill. They give him 15 minutes to get ready. They wouldn't give us an extra 10 minutes in that time to get back to the stations. They had to forfeit first map, which it's look, the rules are rules in a sense, but I do think that, as Dave talks about here, that there can be some bending of the rules to make things more accessible. And so, yeah, they gave you all the time after a 14-hour day and you couldn't get 10 mins. They don't care about streaming the bracket all weekend. As soon as they want to stream it, JobsWorth admins don't care, because, you know, they did stream the finals of the tournament only on main stage for one series. We'll talk about that in a second. And as Dave says here, like, if it was Scump in that situation rather than, you know, Vortex and Amateur, then, you know, obviously, well, not obviously, but I imagine they would have given him the time to compose himself and get himself ready to play, but given it's the amateur scene, they don't. So again, I don't think that's an example of entitlement. I think that's an example really of trying to get equality between amateurs and professionals, and this is what Bandit says over at Team War. Then, thank you to everyone who was supporting them. Unfortunate to see how amateurs were treated entirely. Confusing match time schedules, leaving the players with no proper breaks in between. No water on the tap, no stream to highlight these passionate gamers, and that's really the next thing I wanted to talk about, is the lack of a stream here. And Mohawk also talks about how apparently refs are, you know, changing their, so we never got called to play, and he stood back with his arms crossed saying no when our opponents haven't even started. So apparently there were some issues of referees being like, you know, not partial, let's say, not impartial, and so obviously that's not ideal. This was the screenshot really of when Singularity ended up winning the tournament, which is pretty fantastic. But I really wanted to talk about the streaming situation now that we'll get into. So Adam Apicella, happy to share that Esports Engine is assisting Call of Duty League competition this year to set up, manage and administrate challenges this year. Stoked to be helping this. This is fantastic, right? And this is the thing with the streaming situation. In the past, MLG would set up a tournament. They would have the Alpha, they would have Bravo, Delta, like Charlie, Delta, and they'd also have like an open stream at times. I'm pretty sure that's how Anaheim was run last year. They had an open stream and 4 other streams. Yes, it takes an awful lot of money and effort to set up a stream. It's not as simple as you might think, because if you want to have equality with, okay, you've got a main stream with all the production, all of that stuff, you kind of want to maintain that sort of standard. You don't necessarily want to divert the traffic away from your mainstream to a degree. But still, the fact of the matter is, if you're putting up $250,000 as a prize pool here, you're spending all of this money to, you know, let 200 amateur teams come to your event, setting up all the PS4s, get all the equipment ready, and all the effort and the administration and the referees that it takes to be able to do that. Then you add on top of that fact that there's no stream to even process this, and that's not great at all for amateur players. Because if you're an amateur like your Emigrant Chain, for example, the one game that was on stream, he dropped 16 in a search and destroy. Some pro teams are going to probably be looking at him thinking, if we need to make a change, maybe Chain is a guy that we could potentially bring in, and other players get that opportunity. Even if there was only one featured station and one game at all times in the amateur scene was streamed through the challenges, it would give the professionals an opportunity when they're not playing a game to sit in the green room and just watch the amateur side and, look at some players, because that's the end goal here, right? For the challenges, you can put all this investment in, but these guys have to get picked up by the professional teams. And that's not going to happen as easily if they're not streamed, so that the team managers and the general managers of teams, the guys that are deciding who's going to get to come into the squad, they can't even watch these guys play unless they go and stand behind them in a challenges bracket. That seems like a must to me and a real necessity to have a stream for this kind of stuff. And look, if you want to say that from Activision's perspective, like, okay, fine, we have to keep it to a good quality. If we are going to put a stream out, we can't just, stream the gameplay. Like, we want to go all out. We want to get casters. We want to get observers, all of this stuff. Like, okay, fair enough. To track the prize pool by 50k or 100k or whatever it's going to take to do that for the weekend and make it happen, because I think the amateurs would prefer to play for a lesser prize pool, but have the possibility to get seen more by general managers and the public, so the community can gas them up a little bit, and then pros start talking about them, and all of this kind of stuff happens, because that's the end goal of challenges, right? To get picked up into the professional scene. Without a stream, that opportunity is much diminished. There was some interesting discussion about this on Reddit here. A lot of veterans in the community they played in a lot worse conditions for less money. The amp scene is whacked sometimes. Definitely fair enough, of course, regarding the parking garage situation. I do think it is legitimate to say that some people are entitled. Reflective Overwatch or OW, whatever, does make an interesting comment here. So in the contender scene in Overwatch, people say that the Overwatch League and contenders don't run alongside each other. People are complaining that challenges wasn't streamed, and contenders players complain that they don't get paid any money. You have to choose one, which, okay, is true to some degree. Of course, it does take a lot of money to set up another stream and have that running alongside. MLG did manage to do it, though. Actually, Activision makes billions, so they should just invest the money for a 4-shard profit loss. At the same time, look, Activision didn't have to go all in with a 200-team amateur bracket that they did in Minnesota. They did, though. They put all this money on the table, but yet they don't stream it. Like, it seems like a necessary final step if you're going to go all that way. Of course, it does take a lot of money, but, I really, it's tough to see too many excuses for this. And as Dracula says here, like, I just wanted to reiterate, it's insane that the amateur tournament was not streamed. To me, playing 250k is, 100,000 times more interesting than watching league matches. And yeah, as Maven may have said, like, you might only get 5,000 viewers for one of these streams, for example. But still, those are very valuable 5,000 viewers if some of those are the professional players and whatever. Of course, in terms of viewer to expense, it might not seem worth it to set up that other stream, but it seems like a necessary final step. And I'm sure the amount of money to set up a stream could be found somewhere from the budget going on, even if you have to reduce the total amount of teams that can attend, for example. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the matter. Be intrigued to hear yours down below. Thanks for watching as always. Like if you guys enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new. I'll see you next time.